Good. Okay.
Great. Linika, could we have you on video, please? Thank you. All right. Should we start? Thanks. Welcome for all of those who've joined us today. My name is Arjun Vishwanathan. I'm the co-founder of Saarathi. We are in the space of transforming corporate disability inclusion to start off in India. And today's panel discussion really is around the whole concept of corporate disability inclusion. And to join me as my very esteemed panelists, I have three very eminent folks. Please join me in welcoming Linika Khattar, who leads the diversity chapter at NASSCOM. Linika, welcome. Absolutely delighted with you joining us.
Thanks, Arjun. Thank you.
I've got Tulika Jalota, who's the co-founder for IFO Consulting. Tulika, welcome. Delightful.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Saarathi team.
Yeah, and last but certainly not the least, Praful Baweja, who's co-founder for 6 Degrees. Praful, welcome. Brilliant to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, we've got an interesting 45-50 minutes ahead, and I intend to put it to full use. And the topic that I want to talk about today and seek your perspectives, your views, and to a very large degree, prescriptive guidance on how India as a nation should approach the whole concept of disability inclusion, specifically within the corporates, is what I would like to talk and discuss in detail with you, because it's fairly interesting to know that overall corporate disability in inclusion in India has shown a fair bit of progress, which also is reflective of a fairly transformational shift in societal attitudes. A lot of leading companies are now prioritizing accessible workspaces, digital platforms, and diverse hiring practices. Therefore, and in many ways, accommodations such as assistive technologies and flexible work arrangements are also quite the norm of the day. And as India's corporate landscape evolves, continued efforts towards a holistic disability inclusion promise is important to drive a more equitable and empowered workforce. In that context, Linika, if I could come to you right at the beginning. Now, while a lot of this is true, Linika, it is also true that there are considerable challenges that organizations face in driving disability inclusion as a normal par for the course practice in vast degrees. In that sense, how do you see this overall landscape evolving?
Sure. Thanks, Arjun. So, see, I think from organizations' perspective, there is a clear intent to do disability inclusion, or for that matter, diversity on all aspects, right? I think what I hear a lot of times is about sourcing, right? So where do they source the talent from? I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we hear from a lot of organizations.
Of course.
So as NASSCOM, what we are also saying is that we are happy to host organizations who are supporting diverse hiring as ecosystem partners, so that that information of where could this diverse talent be sourced is available in a particular repository, right? So for organizations to kind of reach out to these ecosystem partners to do diverse hiring. So I think that's one that we hear very often. While disability inclusion is a journey, right? So it is not only about, and it is not only about visible disabilities, right? So it's also about invisible disabilities. It is also about neurodiversity, etc. I think there are these reasonable accommodations which are very important, and organizations do understand those reasonable accommodations, right? So it's about where does one start? I think that's the question which a lot of organizations struggle with, right? So organizations who have disability inclusion, they have a fair understanding. But organizations who are wanting to do disability inclusion, I mean, the journey, right? So in terms of what all they should do from an infrastructure perspective, where should they source, what are the various technologies that they could use to bring about these reasonable accommodations? I think that kind of an understanding is something that organizations do look forward to.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more because Tulika, I'm going to bring you in on this. Is that much, well, some bit has certainly been done, but much more remains to be done and is desired. In that sense, equally, how do you see this landscape evolving and transforming to a place or a juncture where this is more widespread, more acceptable, more awareness prevalent? How do you see that evolving and what will it take for us to get there?
I think both from my experience as a part of the corporate setup and as an entrepreneur. For those who are well aware, educated, the so-called literate class will talk about it. But as individuals and as organizations, just to add on to what Linika said, I think we're still kind of very unsure about what will sit well and what won't. What are the right and the wrongs to do in the area? And for that becomes such a real-time struggle at an organizational level specifically, because even if you have a charter, the agenda that you have to go out and be more inclusive, and it could be diversity of any sorts that we're talking about here, including the PWDs. How to begin? How do you even advertise, right? If you want to attract the right set of people, what is it that is all right to put in your posters and in your advertisements and banners, even on LinkedIn for that matter, which may not be even slightly offensive in nature? So there is a lot that needs to be done, right from the awareness. We talk about it kind of right from an emotional aspect to a more organizations that have taken this up.
Absolutely. And Tulika, I think we're having an issue hearing you. I think your internet connection may be slightly warped or slightly off.
Let me fix that.
Yeah, why don't you fix that? In the meantime, Praful, let me bring you in on this conversation. We've just heard a set of fairly interesting views. How much do you see awareness being perhaps pivotal and central to organizations being able to lead disability inclusion in far, far better measure?
So I'll start with saying that we think we know what we don't know. So most organizations are in a self-fulfilling prophecy of thinking that they know what disability space is all about and what inclusion in disability space is all about. And the effort to actually put the thought and intent into words and actions, even if it is a MVP, even if it is a risk appetite that an organization has and does a pilot program, does a skilling lab, does a certain kind of outreach, does a certain amount of calculated programmatic, approach, there is a lot of slip between, understanding inclusion in its true essence and using it as an umbrella statement. And it's a never-ending journey. It is something that one will continue to do because 1 billion people are to be employed across this planet and who don't have correct employment as far as disability spectrum is concerned, right? And this is visible disability piece. Invisible disability, like Linika says, is even further from there. It's a mammoth task.
Of course.
Not saying that it is easy, it will be something that people can navigate. It is about going extra mile, doing those things in personal, professional, and community spaces of having those conversations about disabilities, right? In daily conversation, having a simple experience that is disabling for a limited time.
No, absolutely. I agree with you because I'd like you to stick to that point because Linika, I'm going to come to you. We just heard this figure that we have, of course, been aware of, which is that it's a billion people on the planet. However, when you look closer in at India and from your vista and spectrum of visibility from NASSCOM's perspective, Well, is your suggestion or guidance to organizations, therefore, to start off with pilots or go full steam ahead and learn while they are navigating that journey?
So I think pilots do help
Okay.
because see, it is not only about improving diversity, right? For us, inclusion is equally important.
Of course.
And if equity and inclusion is our priority, then I think pilots do help. And there are organizations who have done pilots, for example, for neurodiverse hiring, right? Where they've hired certain interns. They've had an experience of having their parents or near ones as buddies, work from home. And some of those aspects have come, have been figured out in the journey, right? And then it is much easier to look at these interns getting conformed in organizations, job roles, definitions, etc. So to me, I think pilots is a good journey because our priority is not only improving diversity, but also to give a good experience to the diverse workforce, right? So to have more equity and inclusion. So I would give a vote to doing pilots.
No, absolutely, Linika. That's a very interesting point because, and Tulika, before I come to you, my apologies. We all wish you a very happy birthday. You see, I didn't forget.
Thank you so much, Arjun.
Tulika, let me bring you in on this. This is a very interesting conversation. We know that there's a very diverse workforce. There's a gig economy out there, and organizations today are looking for commitment, capability, and competence. Now, when so much is available within the overall scheme of the PWD or the Persons with Disabilities ecosystem, why perhaps is it not natural for organizations to think your view, experience, perspective?
Okay. Arjun, your voice is breaking. I'm not too sure if it's my end or your.
I think it. Am I good now?
You're good now.
Thank you.
I missed the last part of your question.
So
though.
shouldn't it logically come very naturally for organizations to look at persons with disabilities, not just from the umbrella of disability inclusion, but as a very natural way of thinking? Could I
Yes
request
and
everybody
no.
else except for the speakers to go on mute, please? Thank you. Yeah, Tulika, you have the floor.
So I personally feel, I mean, it's a more personal opinion than a professional here, Arjun, that it's, yes, definitely that is how it is supposed to be. But the reality versus the truth is always very different. We're, I think, socially conditioned in a society here where certain things don't really come naturally. Certain things you would want to not talk about openly. We're still in a phase where as a family, as a parent, or in general, it doesn't come easy to openly own up an issue with your own kin related to any kind of diversity here. Because not about, and it's not as much about that you're not as a person very comfortable, but you're going to be immediately judged, or in return, some kind of a pity would come in, or some kind of a very insensitive, passing by comment or anything, in general. What I'm trying to say is our society here is now hasn't really evolved to that extent where this can be a daily discussion or a topic to be thought of and discussed about. Make your children more sensitive towards the topic, for example. We don't do that as a practice. We may teach our child when we're bringing up our own kids that, when you greet a guest with a namaste or a hi or a hello, wake up in the morning and say good morning. But we do fail completely at very many levels to get this kind of a sensibility into them also, right? To make them a better human. When that is lacking at right from a granular stage, for us to then reach at a corporate level and then assume that this will come very naturally to people, it's not going to happen. Because the people who are leading, or the leaders of those organizations, are also part of the same ecosystem of the society.
Of course.
So I have a slightly different take that when we've reached a society where we've already learnt, in fact, and not learnt, which was supposed to be. So there's a lot of unlearning in the process. For that to happen is going to take time. Till such time we reach there, then fair enough, it has to be a part of your whole cycle of corporate assessments, that this is how you would at least start beginning to start driving. And we spoke about the pilots. It's a great idea because at least that by that the organizations also get to know that where do they stand in their readiness with this, and do it with a smaller group, and then kind of implement it with your discoveries and your learnings at a larger scale.
Absolutely.
But if you do that pilot in silos and not share your findings with a group in large, it really is impacting a very limited set of pool, right?
No,
In a
absolutely.
very, very limited, small, limited universe.
Indeed. And may I request you to stick with that, because I'm going to bring this to you, Praful. We realize that there are challenges and that what is perhaps required today is a more multi-pronged strategy with different stakeholders involving awareness campaigns, policy reforms, training, collaboration with advocacy groups. How, in your view, experience, perspective, can I request Ms. Kiran or Mr. Kiran Chaudhary to please go on mute? Or Haritha, can you please mute? Thank you. Praful, what is your guidance to organizations that have the intent on how to even approach what clearly is a complex journey ahead?
There are no thumb rules.
None
And-
whatsoever.
And let's thank Meera, because Meera is the only person here who's speaking with hands.
Of course.
And these are the steps. Just learning ABC with hands. Just sitting and having empathetic dinner with somebody in complete darkness and being okay with it, to know how empathy is. Empathy is the first step, one. Because it will work across your professional boundaries, across your personal spaces, across. Empathy and just basic awareness, right? Right to people with disability has 21 pillars, and it identifies in a certain manner. But are we saying that when somebody is diabetic in our family, we don't learn about their disability?
Of course we do.
We do, but we don't claim that it is a disability or it is disabling in a certain manner. We don't look at certain things in a certain thing. So questioning, please question. There are systems that are for people in privilege and power, and that we all understand. That's why allyship exists, that we extend. Those who are included, onus is on us to get people who are excluded inside. Like I have a lot of privilege being supposedly a high functioning person with, ADHD, etc. But on the days when there is brain fog and when there is a certain amount of thing at play, it doesn't matter, right? There are those areas where flexibility has to exist. There are those just basic sympathetic conversations that hiring managers have to do. Interview questions. There are very small little mindful practices that can be embedded and seeded across the ecosystem, right from video interviews so that signing can happen, right from subtitles. There are those hygiene conversations that are not there in our systems. Let's start there and then get into, onboarding, sustenance, training, XYZ, blah, blah, blah.
No, brilliant actually, because Linika, now at NASSCOM, you're doing some fantastic work. It's also very pioneering in many, many ways. That way, Linika, what is your approach to working and partnering with organizations within corporate India to be able to become far more inclusive than they are currently? And what's your perspective on what your advice to them is?
Yeah, so I think, see, it's not only about, as NASSCOM, I think what we did last year was, it was very important for some of the good practices that organizations have, right? So they are known to more and more organizations. Yeah, so we created a compendium of best practices. This is a compendium that we worked with Aon. It's public information. I can also put the chat link on the chat here for all of you to view. So it has detailed good practices of organizations across the diverse pillars, from women to people with disability to LGBTQIA plus neurodiversity, supplier diversity, etc. We've also building some content on our community page. It's again public information. So if you go and have a look, NASSCOM Community Diversity and Inclusion, I think we'll be very happy if more and more people come forward and share their knowledge, right? So if you want, you could write blogs on what are the good steps on diversity, on disability inclusion, so that organizations learn that step by step. I mean, I'm not saying organizations don't know, but few organizations who are wanting to start that as a journey, it becomes like a starting point. As NASSCOM, we're also working on building an assessment framework, which is work in progress, which is like a step by step, right? So a PWD inclusion, we have put questions into that framework, right? So questions like, do you have somebody from the diverse group as part of your ERGs, which basically makes organizations thinking on all aspects of diversity, equity, inclusion when they are working on creating any diverse inclusion in their respective organizations. So those are the few steps, and happy to join hands with others to see how we could make this a reality, right?
Oh, absolutely, Tulika, because this is very interesting now. And Linika just mentioned that, you know, the approach is multi-pronged for sure. Now, in that sense, Tulika, what is equally your view on organizations that are moving towards disability inclusion in slightly larger or maybe significantly larger measure? How important is the culture change or culture transformation for inclusion to be truly embedded within the very fabric of the organization, even through the very ethos?
I may have a slightly skewed viewpoint on that. I mean, it
Please
may
go
not
ahead.
be lying somewhere in the middle, in the center. There are quite a handful of organizations, like Linika said, who are committed to the cause.
Yes.
Now, that being said, since I've been both the sides now as a agency that is working with corporates and rather large ones also, medium, startups, small sized, all. There are a couple of our clients who are driving this agenda really hard. But and I know for a fact, and we know it, that they are committed. They have numbers and they are very committed to the target that in an annual year they have to get people with various diverse backgrounds, and categorically then they run drives for PWD, then they are focused on DEI. That being said, interesting thing is that when any one of us, we are 3 co-founders, any one of us, when we reach out or speak with the client, which is essentially the talent acquisition lead.
Absolutely.
For their position downloads and the requirements. 1, it's super urgent. Okay. 2 is it's exactly the same team every time that is downloading and chasing the requirement for super critical, super senior positions, regular positions, and DEI and PWD. So my point is that unless and until we do not even and stitching it in the fabric of the organization is a very far-sighted thing. I mean, Arjun, it's however novel it is, but it is something which is not going to happen in the near future. It will take time. It will surely happen. Will it take time? But right now we don't even feel the need to kind of, in general, and that this is not applicable to each and every organization, but in general, we don't find the need to probably appoint one particular individual, however middle, junior, or senior that person may be, is irrelevant, to drive this agenda for the organization. So are we saying in an organization of 1,000, 3,000, 4,000, 50,000 people, Can we not dedicate one department or one individual on payrolls essentially only existing to drive this agenda? Nothing else. No other requirements from a hiring perspective, just this. When we begin with that, then at least the groundwork can start happening, that whether or not do we need to cater to those positions and people with exactly the same lens as we cater to a fully, and I fully able, I totally mean from the physical aspect.
Yeah, Haritha, can you please put everybody else on mute, if you don't mind? Praful, coming to you, therefore. Look, in many ways, this decade is the decade of transformation. What really, in your view, will it take for disability inclusion to be truly transformed? I know it's a very vast, expansive question, and there's no 4 or 5 or 7 bullet points to this, but in your perspective, how do you see this panning out?
It is a great time, a lot of movement and a lot of chaos. Chaos is always a great sign universe was born out of that.
Indeed.
So we are at a brink, we are at a breakthrough point, the way that I see things are churning and turning, right? Conversations are happening, and the need is out there. Nobody can deny and decline, right? 50% of population, women, and still they are being called part of DI agenda. Then intersectionality within that will complicate things further, and then women returning to work are being reskilled. So we take a lot of conversations in a very theoretical manner. Practically, it is not that difficult to say that, hey, 75% of the workforce will at least be part of some or the other diverse communities. It's common sense. Yeah. If that is the kind of workforce, and we are supposed to engage with them, communicate with them, see the returns that we get. Apart from workforce, there will be, vendor base, there will be other stakeholders that will be there at customer end, etc. What is it? Where are we currently with each of them? As a dipstick and a check is a first reality check. Audit is a must.
Indeed.
As in our experience, as soon as I utter the A word, most organizations just, either jump at opportunity of knowing that, hey, something like this exists, what will be the parameters, what will be the kind of thing, or they just go back because they are not ready. It's the space where organizational readiness is really questioned, which is audit. Disability inclusion audit with the perspective and things of culture and leadership, how much is there as a commitment, apart from that, policies and benefits, reasonable accommodations. Let's find where you are now. Insurance operators, most of them, they have made great progress, and they do create these employee well-being packages that have all the dynamics covered so far. Great progress there. But are we utilizing that, that kind of service provider for mental health assistance, for any kind of lifestyle adjustment? So these are points, and these are in progress. I'm very glad that that is something that we can direct people towards, and that people are also considering and engaging with, though they might make that leap of faith 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, whenever, even if it is 2 months, 2 days from now. At least being able to offer that, at least being able to say that technology will help more interviews for every person who can't, mobility challenge is one thing, but even for somebody who's, who's just speaking in another language and is a person with disability. How about that?
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. That's an interesting point, because Linika, therefore, when we kind of boil all of this down, is somewhere one of the issues within corporate India also the point that the metrics that we are using to measure success within disability inclusion aren't perhaps adequate or commensurate enough, given the vast breadth of the subject matter itself? Because if it's only going to be count, I'm not very sure that kind of does its job, does it?
No, no, Arjun. So it is not the count. I can assure you for that, it is not the count. Organizations are very, very clear about the metrics or the chain that they need to follow for any diverse inclusion. I
Okay,
mean, along the PWD inclusion. It's from the hiring to the retention to the promotion. I mean, see, that's the endeavor for sure. And that's the metrics. The metrics is not to keep improving the diversity numbers.
of
So
course.
we
not.
recently concluded recognizing TNI Champions Awards. And we had 10-stage detailed criteria to be awarding any organization on any particular category. And it was not only numbers, it was the whole journey of equity and inclusion that was seen before awarding an organization. Obviously numbers, right? So you can't
Obviously.
be saying, for example, on women that you are doing everything right, but you are still at 30% or 20% or 25%, right? So if everything is right, then you have to be at 40%, 45%. And if that is the case, then you will be recognized, right? So the numbers are equally important because it's not easy to retain those numbers until and unless you are following the full cycle, right? So even if corporate India says that we have X percentage of a diversity portfolio, I mean, the person, I mean, nobody would stay with an organization if everything is not being looked at, right?
True that.
So I'm sure corporate India is looking at all of that because you can keep adding, but if you're not retaining, then you will never be able to maintain that.
Oh, absolutely. I kind of quite agree with that because Tulika, I'm going to come back to you on this. And I've noticed that we've got about 15 minutes on the clock. And I'd like to segue into kind of peering into the crystal ball, looking into the future as much as is humanly possible. What, according to you, are steps that you would recommend organizations immediately embark on starting, let's say, Monday, which is day after tomorrow, to commence their journey in whatever fashion is possible, without trying to perfect manna? There's nothing utopian there. I mean,
No, there isn't, and there is not much of a rocket science. It's the will and the desire to do something. So I'm going to try and speak a little in Hindi because I think there are a couple
yes,
of
I did
people who
notice that.
requested that. So मैं कोशिश करूंगी तो थोड़ा हिंदी में भी बोलूं. Yeah. I think the first चीज organizations can do, जो कर सकते हैं वो what we spoke about, जो हम लोगों ने अभी बात करी थी कि एक बहुत clear person in charge. Okay. But उससे पहले जब किसी भी कंपनी के गोल सेट होते हैं at a larger level, you know, all the leaders, सारे C-suits जब अपने गोल सेट करते हैं, and then वो sorry, I'll struggle. It's just that. So, and then they go down. Then this सबको, you know, और टीम में distribute करते हैं. तो उस वक्त क्या ये as a leader मेरे गोल शीट का फॉर्म है, क्या ये मेरे OKR का पार्ट है, क्या मेरा ये KPI है? And one way or the other, पिछले 5-6 साल में डेफिनेटली इम्प्रूव भी बहुत हुआ है कॉर्पोरेट इंडिया में, बहुत इवॉल्व भी हुआ है. So I'm not taking that away from any one of us and from the corporates at all. That being said, at least जब तक personally मैं corporate में थी and जब तक मैं लीड कर रही थी अपने डिपार्टमेंट्स, मेरे OKR में ये कभी ही नहीं है.
होता भी नहीं.
आज तक 19 years के corporate career में, and out of which I think 10 या 11 साल I have been in a position जहाँ मैंने लीड किया है. I've reported to the CEO. I've headed the department. मेरा गोल शीट में ये था नहीं. तो जब मेरे गोल शीट में नहीं है, मेरे इंक्रीमेंट को इम्पैक्ट करने वाला ये नहीं है, मेरे बोनस पे बिल्कुल डेंट भी नहीं है मारेगा, तो मैं अपने टीम में इस बारे में क्यों बात करूंगी? कर सकती हूँ, वो मेरी अच्छाई होगी, ऑनेस्टली, maybe,
Hmm.
you know, क्योंकि maybe I probably relate to this subject. Maybe I feel for it. Maybe my upbringing was such that I'm more understanding, I'm more sensitized towards certain things. That's it. But it may not be something that is being hard driven by my bosses. And therefore, as a boss, मैं भी अपने subordinate से को नहीं बोलूंगी कि आप एक ड्राइव करिए जिसमें मुझे सिर्फ DEI या PWD एजेंडा ड्राइव करना है, या सिर्फ फोकस्ड. आई विल नेवर पिक दैट अप एज अ टॉपिक अपने काउंटर पार्ट्स के साथ, अपने को CXOs के साथ, कि मुझे आपके डिपार्टमेंट में 1% देखना है ये पॉपुलेशन टू बी हायर्ड. दिस वे और दैट वील फिगर दैट आउट. बट करना तो पड़ेगा ही किसी ना किसी तरीके से. बट वो पहला एक कोई तो स्टेप कहीं से उठाएं. आई थिंक
Well,
ये इजीएस्ट है जो एटलीस्ट कर सकते हैं. एक बार मेरे ग्रुप गोल शीट में आ गया, देन जो Linika mentioned, I mean this link that she pasted, I would have gone through that and many other things online. अब तो सब
Yes,
कुछ
yes,
गूगल पे है, right?
no,
And
absolutely.
I am ashamed to say that honestly. मैं admit कर रही हूँ कि अभी तक जब तक Linika ने वो शेयर नहीं किया था, मुझे नहीं पता था कि NASSCOM इतना काम
Which is
कर
my
रहा है इस एरिया में.
important question,
हाँ.
therefore. Praful, which is essentially to you, foundationally and fundamentally, therefore, and I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, मेरी हिंदी उतनी अच्छी नहीं है. मैं, so I even if I try, I'm going to fail miserably. So please forgive me. Sorry about that. I will try to improve. Foundationally and fundamentally, therefore, Praful, do you think awareness is the issue, and should we just start talking about this much more than we are today? Not as a mandate, not as something that's thrust upon us, but simply because it just makes sense.
So, you know, थोड़ा टाइम पहले तुलिका ने एक बात की थी. I will go in and out of Hindi and English जितना हो
Please
सके, right? I'll do that.
At least you have the ability to
Ah.
do that. I'm falling flat there, nevertheless.
Some benefits of having all your autism ADHD tabs on in your head. Multitasking becomes sometimes easier, right? So major point ये है कि हम लोग या तो avoid करते हैं या defend करते हैं subject को,
So
या
true.
resist react करते हैं, या फिर हम लोग advocate करते हैं. हम कभी इसे एक interesting point of view वाले space से देखते नहीं. हम कभी जो norming वाला जो शब्द है, it's not really something that I like to use, because अगर आप किसी को normal कहोगे यानी कि कुछ abnormal भी है, जो according to me
I know.
doesn't exist, right? तो कोई भी conversation भी हमारी रीच से बाहर है आज, या conversation का तरीका हमारी रीच से बाहर है, is because हमने उसे वहां रखा है. Accessing those conversations more and often is about not avoiding, not defending our current stance, not resisting, and not reacting. This, as much as we come to know that we don't know, gearing up to learn more. ये वहां पे बात है कि हमें सबको दिखता है आईना, हर किसी को, मतलब whoever in a certain way, like literally आवाज सुनाई देती है, that is a mirror equivalent to somebody who has visual impairment of certain kinds, right? Self perception हर किसी का है of where we stand, right? Where we are with a certain issue and certain competence. बहुत बार, most of the times, we don't look at it in complete honesty and complete granular details.
Okay.
And that impacts the disability conversation the most. Because अगर एक उम्र के बाद में my parent requires a wheelchair, तो तब मुझे याद आता है एक टाइम पे मेरी mobility affect होती है, या certain kind of like pregnancy में back का issue आ गया, कभी कुछ आ गया, तो मैं mobility question करूं. मैं कभी visually, as I'm losing sight or I've had some operations, that time I will do it. People use the sense of ability as a constant, but it is not. तो वो सिर्फ याद रखना, इतनी सी बात. The abilities are not constant. Everybody will be abled and disabled in their life in some way or the
Right.
other. Ye is the biggest benchmark according to
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Because I do have a view on the clock. Linika, therefore, in kind of conclusion, what is the, and I'm using this word, what's the innovation that we can look forward to from NASSCOM in the months ahead to push forward the diversity and disability inclusion narrative further within organizations? What can we expect from NASSCOM in the coming months, or perhaps even the next 24 months, which is a couple of years, reasonable window?
So Arjun, I'm ready to answer. Okay, but I think I don't think it is right to put all responsibilities on organizations. And therefore, it's absolutely not right to put all responsibilities on NASSCOM.
Indeed,
That's
indeed.
I
no.
mean, we are committed and absolutely committed. So, Tulika, to answer to your point, to say, are these part of KRAs? So if you look at the detailed report that we've done, this is a survey of about 220 plus organizations.
Oh,
You will
lovely.
get a percentage to say how many organizations today say that this should be part of KRAs.
Sure.
And it'll be amazing to see those statistics because they are really positive. How many organizations today have a D&I policy? How many organizations, I mean, you spoke about having 1% dedicated, we are going ahead. So we've taken data to say, in how many organizations is this part of CEO's agenda,
Got you.
Right.
right? So it's not reporting into D&I heads, HR heads, but it is more reporting
It's a
into the
separate division.
CEOs. Yes. I would strongly suggest that, please have a look at this.
I've
report.
already opened
You-
that, honestly,
Yeah.
Linika.
Yeah,
And
I'm
when
gonna
I
be-
say
Very,
something like
very
that,
positive statistics.
Indeed.
absolutely would love to go
And-
through it.
Yeah.
But when I
yeah.
say that, I did mention that it doesn't mean that each and every organization is like that. But
Actually, but yeah,
it's
You
a
know,
But a
great way
lot
to
of
start for sure. Long
organizations-
way to go.
Yeah. So a lot of organizations are there and a lot of organizations have an intent
indeed.
to
Absolutely.
be
yeah.
there. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, that is very, very positive. So
I
to
agree.
answer to your point, Praful, that everybody has a journey, right? And disability could come in to the path of anybody. And it's my own personal experience. I had my left arm fractured for about a month. And I absolutely realized what it takes. Your mental health, your ability to be able to do things. I genuinely felt that, right? But the problem is what I was feeling was not known to the other person, Praful.
Of course.
So I think what is very important is sensitizations across, and it is not about organizations, right? The more and more we talk about it. I mean, that was the time when somebody was asking me, what is happening on your work? And I'm like, really? Do you even know what am I going through? But, and later when I recovered, I realized that I was going through that phase, right? The other person did not know what am I going through. So neither is he wrong, nor am I wrong, right? And that is why sensitizations, people awareness is absolutely critical. I used to walk into my to an office and realize that, my arm is not working, but I can't open the door, right? While we have an absolutely accessible office, we have ramps, we have everything, but smaller things, right? So I think more and more we talk about it, the more and more we make people aware about it, I think, and the responsibility is with all of us, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not only with organizations, it is also with us as individuals, right? So, I mean, that is where I would lead to.
No, I completely agree, Linika, and thank
Yeah.
you for bringing that in, because one of the other observations that I also had, considering that my founder and we've been in this journey now for about a little more than 5 years. I think the onus also lies on persons with disabilities to also skill themselves more adequately in tune with the sign that times are changing. Today, the kind of jobs, the kind of employees that organizations are looking for are performing all kinds of roles that perhaps didn't even exist about 5, 7, 10 years back, or right when we started off working. There's just so much. And therefore, I personally feel that persons with disabilities equally have the responsibility to upskill themselves, keep pace with changing times, for them to be truly considered all the 3 C's that I say, which is capable, competent, and of course, last but not the least, careful enough to be able to do the right thing by looking for jobs. And like Linika rightly said, not necessarily always place the onus on organizations.
Yeah.
What do you? I would agree.
I'll give you an example, right? I was working on a presentation with somebody who's neurodivergent, right? And the person sent me a message at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. And he said that I'm available for about 1.5 hours now. And I can then speak to you at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening. You know, so to me, that sensitization that the person's performance is more important. The person is committed, and that is why he's sending me a message at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely.
He will do my work if he does it at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, or he does it 7 o'clock later, you know, but that understanding a lot of people do not have, you know, in terms of the behavior of, and there is nothing right or wrong, right? There are people with neuro differences who behave differently because they don't like to follow a routine. For a few months, they would not want to work. Which is fine, absolutely. But the fact again is that how many of us know? So the onus and responsibility of sharing some of this is with us, as well as is with people with different, with diversities, right? To say sound is a problem, light is a problem, routine is a problem, too much of management is a problem. You know, I think it is about creating awareness on some of this.
No, absolutely.
That's it.
No, I couldn't agree more, because we've just come to the point where we'd be very happy to take questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Tulika, Praful, Linika, even I are very happy to take any questions, because we're also cognizant of the fact that today is a Saturday, and I would like to give back some part of her birthday to Tulika for sure.
All right.
Any questions, folks from the audience, please feel free to put that in the chat box.
Is age and bar?
I'm sorry?
Age. Age is a bar?
No,
Getting-
it is not a bar.
Oh,
Okay,
age is no bar. None whatsoever.
great. And if you get your work done on time, that is more than enough, na?
Absolutely.
All right.
Somebody
actually-
very rightly said,
It is not your work. It is the work.
It is the
not
work.
your and my work. It's the work.
Okay, great.
There's
Great
nothing
talking
called
to you,
my-
Linika. And yes, you.
Yeah.
Great.
I think that is the messaging that we got to change, right? We got to feel for what we do.
That is
Yes,
about
We're not
and-
doing it for anybody. We are all doing it for ourselves, including me. I'm also doing it for myself, right? So it's the same.
And you very rightly said that sensitizing people about this fact is very, very important,
Very
because
important.
you know what I am going through, nobody understands. Even my own husband doesn't understand that much as you know. So how can I blame someone else? So it's only me who is going through, so I can only understand it.
Yeah.
And very, very, very good. I'm a master's in commerce, but I'm at home. See, I'm not being able to do anything. Although I want to earn so that I can sustain myself. But then thanks a lot for this forum. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Praful, you want to take a stab at that? How do you bring about a confluence or a convergence of people who want to work, like the lady rightly said, and organizations that want to hire? How do you kind of bring them together here?
Yes.
So we do few, like, see, depending on organizations, the roles, etc. There are hiring drives, there are job fairs, there are a lot of places run by people with disability itself, where there are, job boards, etc. So there are those places that exist. If any of you all want to know, we can share it with Sarthi. Sarthi will also have a list where they can direct, and very happy to share that.
Absolutely.
For somebody who is, MCOM, speaking to students, if nothing else.
Nothing else, absolutely. And Swati, you'll be happy to know at Sarthi, we've just launched a very unique inclusion transformation platform, which is essentially a tool that allows you to bridge the gap between employers and disabled or persons with disabilities. You should check it out. Our website is www.sarthi.com. That's SAARATHEE. Any questions? Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Oh, sorry. So I think Vedant, I've just, both Praful and I, we've just addressed this point of how we're bridging the gap between employers and persons with disabilities. Please feel free to go and check it out. Any other questions at all? Doesn't seem it. Well, then it's been a brilliant conversation. Linika, Tulika, Praful, thank you so much. Immensely grateful that you took out the time to join us on this platform. Truly privileged to have spoken with each of you and heard your brilliant and very articulate views. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjun, and the whole
you.
team for having us here.
Thank you. And Meera, personally, thank you very much. Loved having you with us, and thank you for walking people through in sign language. That's pretty much from this side, folks. Stay tuned. Next Saturday, we'll be back again, continuing the same conversation around furthering the disability inclusion concept and embedding it into the very fabric of corporate India. So stay tuned, and God bless. Thank you. Thanks, folks.
Thank you,
Good day.
guys.